welcome to another episode of the CEO Pit. I am Bosch, the CEO of Varlinks, which sponsors this show. We partner with leadership teams to create transformative change in the growing complexity and uncertainty. The CEO Pick is a video podcast devoted to sharing the thought leadership of successful CEOs. Such a leader is our guest today, Reid Carr, the CEO of Red Door Interactive, a fiercely independent full-service marketing and advertising agency. Red Door Interactive helps brands effectively, efficiently, and emotionally deliver their stories to their audiences through full-funnel marketing programs. They balance brand building with performance marketing, strategy with execution, and technology with talent to help their clients win. Reid co-founded Red Door Interactive 19 years ago. Next month is the 19th anniversary in downtown San Diego, California. Since then, Red Door Interactive has grown into one of the largest independent agencies in the country, representing some well-known brands such as ASICS, Nissan, Intuit, Bosch, and many more. Reid won multiple awards such as the Most Admired CEO, 40 Under 40, and the agency won the Best Places to Work 14 years in a row. Hello, Reid, and welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Dave. Good to see you.
I read on your website that you are fiercely independent.
Yep.
And staying that way. So what do you mean by fiercely independent?
Well, a lot of other agencies, often our size, they'll get bought up by one of the holding companies. And I think there's a couple dimensions of this, which is one is being part of, a public company or public entity, partnered up with, within an ecosystem of other agencies. And then there's also the dimension of just an independent spirit of I think what hopefully our clients want from an agency partner is someone who is going to challenge norms, think differently, and help them compete among, what oftentimes very competitive categories. So there's dimensions of being independent, that we can do what we think is right for clients and not be beholden to a public structure. And then obviously the way we think about things and making sure that we have that entrepreneurial spirit that's going to help them evolve.
What's the impact on the culture of the company?
One of the big things of that holding companies require of their agencies within that structure, they require that kind of a swim lane, to stay within your swim lane. And I think what that can do is constrain innovation. So I think from a culture standpoint, it really allows our people to innovate, find new opportunity, and not feel like they are restricted from getting into new spaces, which I think is good for our clients. But again, I think what a lot of our people want to do is do new things. And then additionally, I think within that, our infrastructure also, it's local decision making. It's me as the CEO. There's not someone I have to run this up to in New York or London or somewhere else. And we can really be, I think, custom as it relates to different employee situations, different client situations, and then pursue business that we think is right for us. So we don't necessarily have to take certain kinds of clients, or we can take clients that we're really excited about that might be unique or different. So I think it empowers our people to look for opportunity, broadly speaking, whether it's through tactics or through clients, or also, again, refuse business that we don't feel like fits us culturally. So I think that makes it a lot more comfortable for our people.
As a service provider, you work closely with a lot of companies. So in what way do you run your business differently?
Well, it's hard for me to say how we're different from other folks. That's one of the big things for us, is to make sure that we really are focused on our people and our clients, and try not to think too much about other service providers and what they're doing. So, as a service provider, though, it is important to recognize we are in the service business, and making sure that we adapt how we do what we do. We have to be operationally efficient. So you do need to find that right level of work and collaboration and processes, but at the same time, offering custom solutions for clients to make sure that we adapt to their changing circumstances. Because, there is no playbook. There's a dimension of it, certainly tactics that you can use, and there are things that do work. Tend to work within different stages of the funnel or different types of industries. But at the same token, is we really do need to make sure that we are looking at things freshly for every client that we have. So, I mean, I'd like to think that that's how we're different, is that we make sure that we connect to the business. We understand that every client is a little bit different. They are trying to compete in a different way from their competitors within the category. And then make sure that we adapt on an ongoing basis to changing circumstances, which I think is also speaks to why we have clients for so long. And I think that we have several clients that are well over a decade long relationships that I think speaks to our ability to evolve as they have evolved. So really connecting with our clients in that way.
Every second resume nowadays starts with a cliche results driven executive.
Yeah.
I heard you saying that you focus on the processes. So how does the shift from the results to process paradoxically yields better outcomes?
Understanding that, you do have to have business results. Obviously, you have to pay the bills. So we have to increase. So getting at a foundational level, increase revenue, reduce costs, drive profitability for companies. But then at the same token is making sure that we have sustainability, which is longevity. I mean, there are things that can happen. If you really focus just on short term, we can drive short term profitability for a client, but at the expense of the brand's viability or something to that effect. So we really have to make sure that we are keeping those long and short term priorities in mind. Making sure that we do have processes in place to reevaluate. So we talk about meeting cadence and rhythms, specifically in terms of annual planning, quarterly kind of realignment, monthly KPIs, weekly status, daily numbers, and having that kind of rhythm. It's kind of that heartbeat of an organization, but also allows us that backstop to make sure that we're meeting the needs on an ongoing basis. And I think that in order to operate within a world of chaos, which is everyone's circumstance, you have to have systems and processes to make sure that we can operate and challenge whatever assumptions that may be happening or address whatever chaos that may happen. Because if you don't plan, then you don't have space for the unplanned. And I think that that's what's really critical for any agency or any client. And I guess, a big part of that being the partnership that we have between the two.
Great. Just before the show, I watched your TED Talks, 100% jerk-free workplace.
Yep.
I was amazed that it's part of your core values. And what struck me the most was your experience with another company where the jerks were perceived as the rainmakers. So, and I'll post the link to that talk at the bottom of the video. So I'm very curious, how do you build a 100% jerk-free workplace without the rainmakers?
I think the adage goes that none of us is as smart as all of us. And I think that was really the tactic that we took, because I think we recognized too, life happens and everyone has good days and bad days. And, recognized in that environment and the TED Talk that you're talking about, God, it's, more than a decade old for us, but it's a core value that we still have today. And guides us in so many ways. And I think it's part of an overall formula. That is, the team is more important than the individual, and it's a culture of open-mindedness and respect. We are working in a very cross-channel environment. We are working in an environment that, one day someone has a fantastic idea and they're from a different department or from a different level. And we want to make sure that everyone has that freedom to contribute those ideas. So, I think what I recognized back in the day was the day that, if someone was a rainmaker, but they're also a jerk, the day that their creative well or their capabilities dried up a little bit, there was no one going to be there to back them up. And I don't think that that's fair to them if you allow them to have that kind of freedom to be a jerk until, they stop performing and then you boot them. And so I figured that if we had a fantastic team that worked well together, we will always be better than a single rainmaker, or someone who provides ideas or someone who goes in, any of that kind of thing. It's a team-based environment. And I do believe, and I will also say, by the way, no right, no wrong. If someone wants to operate their business in a different way and be wholly dependent on a few solid rainmakers, that's their prerogative. That's just not who we are. And I feel better that way. I feel like we have a good group of people who like working together, but also respect working together. and we'll challenge one another's opinions about certain things or direction or ideas, but we'll do so respectfully, such that we're always making it better and adding on to one another's ideas to really deliver what outcomes we think are important.
I love your quote. I'll read it actually, what you said. None of us as smart as all of us. It's just such a profound quote. It reminds me another quote from Peter Senge. He's an MIT professor and the author of The Fifth Discipline. It says it's amazing how often you come across teams with an average intelligence of over 120, but the team functions at a collective intelligence of about 60.
Yeah.
When you have a strong collective, you don't need the jerks, you don't need the rainmakers, right?
Correct.
How do you overcome this hurdle that the egos come to play when you bring a team of not jerks, but really strong, opinionated, creative, right? You have a lot of creative people with their own ideas, and you want to create a situation, a team that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
We are conscious about that as being important to us. So we have got to recruit people who are innately that way. They're innately team players. They have a humility. They believe that they're with confidence, because at the same token as when you are in a team environment like that, you do have to have a degree of confidence as well, that you're willing to put your idea out there and then have it challenged. So the humility part of it then says, maybe I don't have the best idea and I'm willing to put it out there, and I'm confident enough to have a challenge. So we do that in the recruiting process. And yeah, I mean, you definitely can have some strong personalities, and I'm sure they are fantastic talent. And they'll find a wonderful home somewhere else. I think in our environment, we will have fantastic talent that also is willing to play as part of a team.
So you're looking for kind of a combination of the creativity and humility at the same time.
Yeah, and confidence. I mean, again, you've got confidence without arrogance.
I read on your website that you are moving about your future vision, and Agile was part of it. How does it play? Because it's taken from the software development. I'm really curious how other companies are taking into a different worlds. I know that there are companies like in a biotech start to become agile. It's not just on the software development, but the behavior, the leadership. How does it affect the creative agency, the movement into agile? How does it affect your day-to-day?
One of the benefits of Agile is that customer focus, right? Is understanding kind of what your user stories are, how are people going to respond, and not getting hung up on features for the sake of features, but to really understand how people are going to use things, do things, feel things, all of that. How that affects the organization, it gives us flexibility. I think you want to have obviously a focus on what it is that you're trying to accomplish long term, but have that adaptability within your cycles, your sprints, as they call in Agile, to react to the changing circumstances. Because I think it is difficult to perfectly predict how everything is going to work out on a day-to-day or month-to-month basis. So we have those backstops. We have these opportunities. I mentioned the meeting rhythms earlier and the cadence that we have for those, but understanding where we're headed and giving that flexibility of how we're going to get there. We do think about it in terms of, all the different ways you can get from, New York to LA or vice versa. So a lot of different ways you can get there. It depends on what path you want to take. You want to take the fast route, the scenic route, go through a particular place to see someone. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. So we need to make sure that we're able to adapt and respond to what the current conditions and the needs are.
I'm sure that you see as well this convergence, especially in your domain of marketing, advertising, of the creative and the technology, right? So, and there are more interdependencies between the two. So if in the past you have the creative that actually just did the copy, now, if he doesn't understand the metrics and how it works with the technology, so those interdependencies create probably more complexity. So what do you see the needs from the leadership team, specifically from the leaders, to deal with this growing complexity when the convergence of technology and creative?
Sometimes people can tend to overthink all of that. I think the simplest format is just communication. Are we aligned on what the outcomes and the goals are? Are we aligned on what needs to happen at a high level? And those outcomes are, again, typically quite simple. Are we aligned with the purpose of the organization? Are we fulfilling why we exist? Then are we delivering on business objectives to create that sustainability, which is, profitability, which is oriented around driving revenue or reducing costs? Pretty simple from that standpoint. Do we have the strategies in place that are going to allow us to reach those financial objectives that create that sustainability? And then do we have the right tactics that align with those strategies? Within all of that, so that's a framework from which to operate, but everyone's going to approach it from their perspective, whether it's the creative side, the DevOps or technical side, the cross-channel parts for SEO, social, paid media, whatever that may be. And so do we have all of the pieces in place that allow them to contribute what they know as an expert from their perspective, being an expert in technology, being an expert in creative or whatever that may be? Are we aligned of where we're headed, and where are we willing to kind of share with one another and communicate with one another so that we're yielding particular projects, strategies, tactics, and we know on a day-to-day basis whether or not we're winning or losing. I mean, our purpose statement is together we create to help each other win. And we always say that win component is what fun is a game if you don't know the score. How are we doing? And are we winning or are we losing on any given day? And do we have the group and the team on the floor that can help us achieve the objectives that we've set out for ourselves?
I love it that you started with the purpose and then you went to sustainability and then to the strategy.
Yep.
Not the other way around. So that was beautiful. So before we wrap it up, I'm very curious, Reid, what was influence your leadership philosophy? You run a business for next month 19 years.
Yeah.
And what is, if you share something that had a big impact or influence on your leadership foundation?
I think foundationally, when we first started Red Door, I wrote a business plan. And I think there's a lot of stuff when we start thinking through what it is was a service provider, what it is we really sell. And on a day-to-day basis, what we were able to sell is our people, our capabilities, our strengths, our minds, our training. And when we were starting to boil it down at a pure financial level, which also kind of speaks a little bit to how we align around, you have to have that sustainability. So financial component of it. I had been looking at other service providers where you would see someone would charge $100 an hour and someone would charge $1,000 an hour. And if we started looking at it, so what was really that critical difference is why someone else is willing to pay one or the other is someone saw more value in that one person's hour versus someone else's. And so at the end of the day, I recognized that it was about, one, our people, two, our ability to attract really capable people, three, train those people, give them the tools and training that they need, and then obviously retain those people because if we're going to do all of that, we better make sure we've got them, that we keep them. So that's a foundational component of what I think needs to happen in any service provider. And then at the net of it is, I don't live in LA or New York or some of these places that are classically considered, your advertising communities. A thing I have great passion for is brand, advertising, marketing, how we position companies. And I was in LA and I didn't want to live there anymore. I wanted to live in San Diego. So recognizing the idea that Red Door is built on being simply a place I want to work. And I believe that other people who have this similar philosophy will want to be here as well. So that was the other foundational component is you take those pieces that I think are important to a service provider and layer that on top of finding a bunch of people who have a similar mindset. So I better communicate what that mindset is. And that's why we were overt about our core values, being fiercely independent, what our purpose statement is. So that purpose thing that I talked about earlier. So if I can communicate what our purpose is, have strong objective strategies and tactics, understand how we're performing on a day-to-day basis and be open about that to give really smart, capable people the tools and the data and information that they need to direct all of that in a team-based environment, then we're in a pretty fun place on a day-to-day basis. And that's all we were really looking for at that point in time. What's really drives that is, are we able to stay present on a day-to-day basis, yet deliver the results that help us progress toward a life that we want to lead in a place that we want to live. And now, as we've grown in places, plural, where people want to live, and the flexibility that we've got our Denver office, live here in San Diego, but we've also got individuals. We've always been a flexible work environment to let people work where they want to work. So can we find the best available talent wherever they may be because they are there for their personal reasons? So we want to make sure that we bring the best of people and humans to bear in a team-based environment. And that's what drove my kind of leadership philosophy, so to speak, is to say, can we get the best out of the people, individuals that we have, and put them in a place that's going to help us all together succeed, whatever success looks like to the individual.
That was beautiful. And I think that this philosophy of leadership as the people as the center of the leadership philosophy, that's not only for service provider, it should be for any product company. And, the lines actually start to blur between service and products, as products, a lot of service productize their services and the other way around.
Yeah. Well, that's what I've always said is a product company better know what service business they're in, and a service business better know what product company they're in, what they sell as a product. So, and if they don't understand that, then there's oftentimes a slow decline. It doesn't tend to happen right off the bat, but at some point they need to figure that out.
Great. Thank you so much for being on the show and taking the time to be with us today. And that was a great time we spent together.
You got it, Dave. Thanks for having me, man.
And thank you for watching the show. And I'm looking forward to see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.